morning. Well, we welcome you and your family and your friends to Unity Spiritual Center, where we honor the universal truths in all religions and respect each individual's right to choose a spiritual path. No matter who you are or where you might be on your spiritual path, you're always welcome here. Hi, my name's Sherry Humes, and I'm your podium assistant today. And today we have Nicholas Griffin. He is our guest speaker, and JP Falcon Grady as our musical guest. So it should be a great Sunday morning. Now, let's get centered before we say our 5 principles together. Let's take a deep breath together, in and out. God is good and present in all things. The holiness of God is my own true nature. I am creating my experiences by how I think. My thinking is guided by my daily affirmative prayers and affirmative actions. I follow and I am sustained by the values in every way and every day. Thank you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to join together in a time of meditation. So take a few moments to become comfortable. Settle your body. Follow the in and out of your breath. This is your time to relax. Your time to commune with Spirit. In the quiet of your mind, ponder the ways you find strength. This is not about physical strength, but inner strength. How does spiritual strength feel? For you, is it a feeling in your body? A knowing that propels you? Do you identify with physical strength more than inner spiritual strength? Spirit, or source energy, is everywhere and in all things. The true pool of energy for all strength originates from Spirit, Source, the divine. Owning your strength as a child of God, a child of the divine, is delightful. It is delightful to commune and connect with your own pool of strength. Let's take a walk. Pick a favorite path through a field, a walk in the woods, Enjoy the freshness around you. Enjoy the ease and beauty around you. Notice a large pond or lake ahead and walk towards it. As you come to the edge of the water, you see how clear it is, the reflection of the vegetation around. And now you look and see your own reflection. This is your pool of strength. You can ask for clarity, guidance, inspiration. You can ask to how more fully experience your spiritual strength. It's time to return from this communion with Spirit. Turn around and walk back. And as you do, give thanks for the experience you gained. Return to your breath and feel your breath come in and out. Linger for a moment in the glow of your new spiritual strength. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And so it is. Amen. Now, let us welcome our guest speaker, Nicholas Griffin.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you again, even if I can't see you. But I can imagine you, I hope, sitting out there. And I welcome you to our service this morning at our Unity Church. Several people have said to me, you know, you're an Irishman, aren't you? And I have an Irish name, and I lived in Ireland on and off for many years. And I think I'm probably Irish by temperament, so they said they wanted to hear some jokes, some Irish jokes. And I always liked to start my talks when I had permanent ministry with what I called a mirth moment. You have to be very careful with mirth moments because, of course, they mustn't be offensive and they must be genuinely funny. And if possible, they must make fun of the joke teller because no one ever really is sorry about that. But I'll tell you a joke about a minister. And he was worried, very concerned about, as many ministers can be, the financial condition of his church. And so one morning before the service began, he stood up and he addressed his parishioners from the pulpit. He said, you know, we are in considerable need of money. We have to repair the roof. We've got to mend the sidewalks. We've got to do a new kitchen. We need quite a bit. And of course, we're looking for you to help us if you'll stand up, if you're willing. At that very moment, the organist struck up the national anthem, the Stars and Stripes. So everybody got up. Of course, it was a very lucrative morning for the church, as you can imagine, and I believe the organist himself received a small recognition. Whether he did it deliberately or not, who can say? But that is a church joke, so be careful. If your organist at any time strikes up Stars and Stripes, be careful before you stand up for what you're standing up for. Okay, now we want to talk about strength. Strength. this morning. We all know about strength. Strength is a great word and one that we understand. We understand very plainly because there are many, many times in our lives that we need it. Just let me read you these words from the book of Isaiah. He says, "In stillness and in staying quiet, there lies your strength. If you will have none of it, then you must take horse and flee." In other words, in quietness and in strength, there is your security. And those words have always struck me because as a young man, as with many other young men, I'm sure, and young women, the idea has been to maximize our physical strength. I've seen men and women running marathons. I used to do marathons myself. Can you believe it? Exerting themselves to the limit, just praying for enough strength to beat that 3-hour limit, that 4-hour limit. Never mind the 2-hour limit. We won't even think about that one. But I remember myself in 3 marathons in 1 year, which was probably far too many. I sought that elusive quality of extra strength. I thought if I ate a little differently, if I exercised a little differently, if I jumped up and down in a different way, if I started slow and finished quick, or I started quick and finished slow, which was usually what happened to me, somehow I would be given the strength. And it really didn't occur to me, as it should have done, that the greatest strength that we as human beings, if you want, as children of God, the greatest strength that we can exhibit is not necessarily physical strength. It's moral strength. It's the strength that it sometimes takes to do the right thing or to take the right action. We could be Hercules or a mouse and still take the right action. Why is it we so often have to think of raw power as the only form of power, coercive power? If he doesn't do what I want, I'll make him do it. It happens. I remember when I was growing up and introduced to Greek mythology, there was a giant called Antaeus, and he was a wrestler. And every time he wrestled with the gods sometimes, every time he wrestled and struck the ground was his mother. Every time he struck the ground, he arose strengthened physically to take on another great challenge. Well, I think when I was a youngster, I aspired to be Antaeus. I must have done, because every time I fell to the ground, knocked over by some bully or whatever, I always thought I was going to rise stronger than when I fell. Physically, that is. Of course, I should have risen morally stronger and say, you cannot hurt me, whatever you do. But I didn't. I usually aimed with clenched fist. Sometimes this indicates greater strength, my friends, than this. And it is that kind of strength, I think, that we seek in our spiritual search. I've always been powerfully, very, very powerfully impressed by the stories I've heard of Holocaust survivors. Many times I've heard it said, well, if you had been stronger physically, if you had banded together all of you, if you had fought back, somehow you would have saved so many of yourselves from extinction. Well, of course, if you know anything about the period and the history, you will understand that it is much, much easier to succumb to threats of great strength. It takes a huge degree of moral courage to suffer through them and emerge unscathed the other side. Some of the most remarkable people that I've ever known have been able to accomplish this. They've got over the immediate threat, which is really, in a sense, the animal threat, when we're threatened suddenly. I remember, many years ago, I was in a confrontation with somebody in California. It was on a street, busy street. It was at an intersection, difficult intersection, and this guy got in front of me, and I tried to get round him, and he had a road rage incident. He got out of his truck, and he was a big guy. I mean, big guy. And he came towards me. I thought, well, I'm kind of outclassed, but I could always aim a few before I went down. But I didn't. I put my hands up. Something prompted me just to put my hands up and not resist, be non-resistant. And the guy was completely confounded. I think he'd looked forward to knocking the what's-it out of me, but he didn't get around to it because he didn't know what to do with this. And I said, bless you, brother. Got back into my car and managed to drive off. But he was still standing there, puzzled in the road. But that was a time when it seemed to me that the strength of wisdom was more important than the strength of strength, physically speaking. And I think many of us could learn the lesson of non-resistance. Non-resistance is something that many people find very, very difficult to practice. I, myself, and many, many others. They see it fundamentally as weakness. Well, it's weak. But you see, it's really in many ways a victory. We're saying, I'm not letting your material strength, your shouting, your hitting, your rushing, your yelling, your pushing, I'm not seeing this as effective in my life. I would rather turn away. As Jesus did he not, in the garden? He told the disciple to put up his sword. Well, let's not forget that many of Jesus' disciples had armed themselves, not just the 12, but many of the others who followed him, because it wasn't always safe on the roads in those days, and you needed some kind of protection. That's why people rode often in caravan and not alone, or walk alone. But Jesus wasn't afraid, even in that moment. Now, was that a defeat? I've heard people say, Jesus should have stood up to them. He should have stood up to the Roman guards, however few they were. He could have let his disciples loose on them. He probably had more than a dozen with him. Who knows? We never know. But I think the moral victory there, the moral strength that was shown in that moment is infinitely greater than any degree of physical strength that could ever be shown. And that was carried all the way through, was it not, to the crucifixion itself, when Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive them, for they know not what they do," because he believed, as I think many of us believed, in something called, maybe we call it karma, I don't know, but a cruel, violent act performed out of superior physical power, or even other forms of power. That doesn't really redound to our spiritual credit, does it? I don't know. You'd have to judge for yourself. But the people that I've always admired most, the people whom I have always wanted to emulate, were those who won those moral victories, those spiritual victories that are just so extraordinary to me that they take a huge amount of strength to accomplish. As I say, compassion is one of those. And another immense victory for moral, spiritual strength, in my estimation, is the capacity and the ability to let go. Let go. Let go. Sometimes people say, let go and let God. I had an extraordinary experience some years ago when I was visiting prisoners in the state penitentiary in Kansas. I happened to know the pastor very well, who attended the prisoners on death row, as a matter of fact. Indeed, he was a member of Unity. and sometimes he would let me drive down with him to the state penitentiary. And while he visited with these people, he allowed me to sit and listen, because he knew, of course, how vitally interested I was in those issues, spiritual issues and so forth. And we saw one man who had been guilty, and there was no doubt that he had been guilty, of the most ruthless crimes. Killed a couple of people terribly, and seemed unrepentant. And we met a little later on with 2 or 3 of the family of one of the slain individuals. And I thought, oh, well, naturally they're going to want to ask us, when's the day of the execution? We'll be right there. They didn't. They said, we've released him. We let him go. We forgive him, in fact. We release him. And they weren't fooling. That wasn't just a polite sentiment for the pastor who was visiting. No, it was a genuine sentiment. They had used their faith to forgive this man, the most cruel and heinous crime. Amazing. What strength that must have taken. It would have been so much easier to get a club and walk in there and, if you could, and exercise your own justice on the spot. No, they didn't want to do that. They were prepared even for him to be sentenced to life imprisonment, to be spared the death sentence, if that would provide him with an opportunity to repent. And it wasn't done, interestingly, out of, let's say, Christian fundamentalism, which you might expect. Maybe their pastor had told them, oh, well, it's your Christian duty to forgive. No, they, as far as I know, were not particularly religious or spiritually inclined people. And yet they had learned that letting go in that fashion, releasing and letting go, took such enormous strength, courage and strength, great strength, you can feel it. And it would be with them for the rest of their lives, not just a random act of hitting somebody over the head, but for the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, I don't know. They were always going to think of that step they took in releasing that man and refusing to condemn him for what he had done. These to me at least, are the real indications of strength in a person. Moral strength, spiritual strength, sometimes even physical strength. Sometimes it does take a modicum of physical strength to bring yourself to the point of forgiveness. And that, to me, is a remarkable achievement and something I've tried to work with all my life. I hate injustice, shouldn't we all? I would go to bat for anybody I could to help them, and have done so over many years in ministry. I've even helped people that I didn't like very much. Maybe they didn't like me, and I certainly didn't like what they'd done. But I tried to help them to come through to a realization that they had to recognize their transgressions, but they also had to look at those who were willing to accept them, release them, and give praise and thanksgiving that was a gesture, a human gesture that they could experience. For all their anger and their rage, and perhaps they'd had terrible upbringings and brutal childhoods, for all that scarring and bitterness and rage that some of these people had, expressed in strength because they didn't know how to express it any other way. Strength, hit somebody, bash somebody, hit a door. I was guilty one time of putting my fist through a wall. How about that? Well, I was provoked, and there was nobody else around. So it was a circumstance, not a person. My wife fixed the wall afterwards. She said what a good idea it would be if we bought some cheap coffee tables from Goodwill or something, and when I got really mad, I could jump on one. But I never carried things that far. I had quite a hot temper when I was a young man, but never to the point, I trust, of real violence. It was frustration more than violence. But I've learned over the years that the greatest the greatest strength is moral courage, spiritual courage. That's the real, in my estimation, the real criterion of who we are and who we can be as human beings. What it is possible for us to achieve without the bombs and the rockets and the clubs and the guns and the knives. And, okay, you know, if we have to go that route, I'm sure we will. But surely sometimes first, and I don't think it's weakness, to try that other way, trying to find a solution through wisdom, through good judgment, through allowing people some room to maneuver. I don't know. It's finely gauged. But if you ask me, would I rather have physical strength as an indication of human maturity or spiritual strength? I now, at my age, indubitably, undoubtedly, would answer the latter. Show me some spiritual strength, folks, and I will indeed admire you enormously.
Okay. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you for being with us today. We've reached the part in our service that we get to give, to practice the abundance that we are. There are two ways that you can give, and you'll find that information at the end of the service. We're always grateful for your generous gift, and as you consider your gift, affirm, I give freely and joyfully, for God is my source, and I have abundance in all areas of my life. Please say with me our offertory blessing. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Let's welcome our musical guest, J.P. Falcon Grady.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is J.P. Falcon Grady, and I do an original song here. This song is called Deep. And this one is inspired by my wife. Please enjoy. Something deep moves the forest. Something deep moves the trees. Something deep moves like water. Something deep moves with ease. I'm in the atmosphere. I've been far and near, never been so deep, never been so deep. Heard your name whispered in the winter. Heard your name on poured from ancient prayers and melodies. I, like water, you set me free, set me I'm in the atmosphere. I've been far and near, never been so deep, never been so deep.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Appreciate you so very much. Thank you, JP. We're at the end of our service, and so together let's say our prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you for being with us today. Have a blessed week ahead.